Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving into a fundamental, ground-up shift in business organization today. And honestly, this goes way beyond the basic AI automation we've been hearing about for the last few years. We aren't just talking about making simple tasks a little faster anymore. We are talking about completely redesigning the actual infrastructure of how work gets done.
For the longest time, right, the primary question every executive asked was simply, what tasks can we automate? But as AI evolves at this breakneck speed, that question is, well, it's getting dangerously outdated. Instead, we need to ask this incredibly powerful, pivotal question. Where must the human consciously remain in the system?
To really wrap our heads around that, we're going to explore an excellent Management Pro contribution by Willem Scheepers. He is the creator of the AI Barbell and the HCAF framework. And these frameworks are absolutely crucial because they give us a realistic lens to see exactly what happens to an organization's workforce when AI basically takes the wheel.
All right, so here is our quick roadmap for today. We'll start with 1, the evolution to Autosapiens. Then 2, the AI Barbell model. 3, the danger of human hollowing. 4, the solution, the HCAF framework. 5, moving from function to assignment. And finally, 6, essential questions for the future.
Let's get right into Section 1, the evolution to Autosapiens, moving from a simple chatbot to a true process actor. Think about the massive trajectory we've been on. We started with the basic reactive chatbot. You ask it about your vacation days, it gives you an answer. But you, the human, are still totally in charge of what happens next. Then we moved a step up to the AI agent. This one can actually execute a bounded task, like, say, pulling data and drafting up a quick report. But the next leap, that's Autosapiens. This is a system that continuously learns, adapts, and organizes entire processes on its own. It doesn't just do a single task, it improves the whole system. It's super important to understand the massive difference in scope here. Classic automation, that was all about highly repeating, predictable stuff, like processing standard invoices. But Autosapiens, they actually take on what we traditionally consider middle management functions. We're talking real coordination, prioritization, resource allocation, and even preparing complex decisions. So, by defining Autosapiens this way, we start to realize that AI is no longer just a tool you pick up, use, and put down. It has quite literally become the infrastructure of the organization. It nests deeply within processes and acts as a process actor. You can think of it as a relentless, non-human colleague working tirelessly in the background. And we're seeing this autonomous processing in action across massive workflows right now. Think about finance, human resources, logistics, compliance. AI is monitoring streams of work, it's flagging deviations, and it's initiating follow-up steps entirely on its own, without waiting for a human to hit go. Okay, moving on to Section 2, the AI Barbell model, and what we call the vulnerable middle. What is changing the infrastructure due to the organization itself? Well, the AI Barbell model shows us a pretty polarized future. Picture a barbell in your head, heavy and stacked on both ends, but super thin in the middle. On one end, you have this extreme execution efficiency, driven entirely by AI. On the exact opposite end, you have a growing, desperate need for high-level human judgment, ethics, and strategy. But that middle layer? It's rapidly evaporating. And here is the hidden cost of losing that layer. That vulnerable middle space is exactly where professionals historically figured out how the organization actually works. It's where junior employees puzzled over messy exceptions, where they learned to doubt the data, and ultimately, where they built their professional craftsmanship. Which brings us right to Section 3, the danger of human hollowing, and the hidden price of all this new efficiency. Human hollowing means an organization gets remarkably fast, right? The error margins look incredibly small on your quarterly dashboards. But underneath all those shiny metrics, the company is slowly emptying out its capacity for meaningful human insight, context sensitivity, and psychological safety. Basically, the organization becomes hyper-productive but intellectually bankrupt. So the really critical point is this. If humans are just reduced to escalation points, the people who only step in when the AI completely drops the ball, how on earth will junior and mid-level professionals ever build the pattern recognition they need to become true experts? If AI smooths out all the friction and does all the heavy lifting up front, the human simply never develops the deep judgment required to evaluate the final outcome.
To combat this really brittle organizational structure, Willem Scheepers introduces a vital operational philosophy. This is Section 4, the solution, the HCAF framework, which is all about allocating human capital.
Now, HCAF, The Human Capital Allocation Framework is not your traditional HR headcount planning. We aren't talking about a dashboard of occupancy rates or time tracking here. It is the necessary design counterpart to Autosapiens. It explicitly and deliberately dictates where human presence must consciously remain in a workflow to protect the company's collective wisdom. While Autosapiens decide what can be done autonomously, HCAF steps in to ensure we don't accidentally design out all the meaningful professional friction required to keep an organization wise. Because, think about it, not all friction is bad. Sometimes a delay is actually just diligence. Sometimes doing duplicate work is a necessary second look. HCAF makes sure we keep humans exactly where moral and professional judgment are needed the absolute most.
To actually implement this, we need a massive shift in mindset. Let's look at Section 5, From Function to Assignment, the new way of HR thinking.
Because AI separates work from fixed job titles, we have to stop thinking in terms of traditional functions with static lists of responsibilities. Instead, we've got to start analyzing work at a much deeper level, specific assignments. We have to look at a task and ask, okay, what is the actual risk here? How much empathy is required? Does this need normative judgment? For example, instead of just hiring for an accountant role, you evaluate the human empathy and situational awareness needed for a specific assignment, like handling a client's bankruptcy. Only by breaking work down this way can we figure out the perfect mix of human and machine.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 6, Questions for the Future, and the ultimate strategic management question.
Directors and organizational designers need to urgently ask these 4 strategic questions. 1. Which workflows will be autonomously driven? 2. Where are human learning moments disappearing? 3. Which decisions demand ultimate human responsibility? And 4. How do we allocate talent to grow human judgment? Think about number 2, pinpointing exactly where learning is vanishing, and number 3, figuring out which decisions demand human responsibility before any damage is done, not just as a symbolic rubber stamp at the end. These aren't just fringe HR questions, folks. These are the core strategic questions about the very survival of your company.
Ultimately, an autonomous organization doesn't just magically become wise on its own. Without conscious design, it just becomes fast, highly measurable, and totally insensitive. As the quote perfectly puts it, Autosapiens can make organizations faster, but HCAF must ensure they do not become emptier. As you integrate these wildly powerful new systems, you have to ask yourself, are you just optimizing a process, or are you deliberately designing a system that protects and grows human judgment? Let that sink in. Thanks so much for joining us on this explainer, and we'll see you next time.